I mean, every time we go to the airport and take an Uber, we're using this technology. So it's not really all that different. And then to add on the next layer, like you were saying, inventory management, it's totally feasible for us to connect the inventory management software that you have to something like our transportation data, right? And we could build some kind of project around that too. So, I mean, that's not out of the box. That's something we'd have to build. But I mean, those kinds of solutions are possible. So that literally once it's arrived and you've confirmed that you got it, it will update your inventory.
Without supplies, there's no surgery. Without products, there's no patient care. Welcome to Power Supply, the healthcare supply chain podcast focused on helping you navigate the intricacies of logistics, purchasing, contracting, and supplier relationships. Each episode, we speak with healthcare executives, supply chain leaders, and innovative entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the loading dock to strategic sourcing, from buyers to the C-suite, and across the enterprise, we tackle the real-life issues impacting the healthcare supply chain. Whether you're tuning in for conversation or inspiration, we're glad you're here. You're just in time to hear it from the source and stock up on insight. So sit back and plug into Power Supply.
On today's episode of Power Supply, we will be speaking with Justin Cooper. You can call him Coop. He's the Director of Strategic Consulting and Continuous Improvement at Uber Freight. I had a chance to meet him at the ARM conference this past month and was just really dynamic in an executive session. So, Gary, I'm super excited to have him on. We're going to learn all about the impact or the potential impact of leveraging the gig economy to revolutionize healthcare logistics.
Sounds like a disruptive piece of information, which is a positive to make us better. So gig economy, new word to me. So I'm really I'm waiting on bated breath to hear what he has to say and learn and grow, as Hayes would call me, as a fourth grader, third grader, getting to my high school diploma. So I'm sure he's got a great talent. You've said nothing but great things about him from your visits at the ARM conference. So looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
All right, everybody, stay with us. Coop, right after a short break.
I'm Hayes Walder.
This is Gary Skinner.
And I'm Justin Poulin.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to Power Supply.
Hey, joining us now, Justin Cooper, Director of Strategic Consulting and Continuous Improvement at Uber Freight. And from now on, we'll be referring to you as Coop. Welcome to the show. It's great to meet you just a few weeks ago at the ARM conference.
It was really nice to be here. Thank you. It was nice to meet you as well. And we kind of did a little right afterwards did a little podcast thing as well, which was pretty fun.
Yeah, for those of you that are tuning into the Power Supply podcast feed, we also co-release all of the ARM podcasts that I produce in our partnership with ARM, which is why we can bring to you continuing education credits if you have your CMRP certification. And yeah, we Coop really knocked him dead at the ARM conference. Definitely a disruptive conversation we're going to be having today about leveraging the gig economy. And I just kind of grabbed him and pulled him aside and said, hey, before you hit the airport, why don't you do a quick podcast with us? So you were gracious, and you got some recency on what it's like to be on a pod. And honestly, I think we're gonna have a hard time fitting this into 30 minutes.
Well, I'm excited to be here. So for the sake of brevity, why don't we jump right in?
Yeah. Woo! I like this. I like this. Let's get it. Yeah, let's get after it.
Absolutely a pro.
Coop should be just running point for Justin because he's just keeping him on point and task.
I'm just warming you guys up. Nobody will even notice. All of a sudden, it'll be the other Justin hosting all these podcasts.
Well, we know it can't be Gary because he never shows up.
I can't hear you, Hayes. Are you talking? You shut your mouth when you're talking to me, Hayes.
All right, Coop, welcome to the Lion's Den.
That'll never make it on the podcast.
Love you, Hayes. Love you, brother.
Justin, why don't you just talk about your background, and how you even wound up, kind of looking at healthcare? Because I don't think I know Uber's not really known for healthcare. So this is what's going to make this so interesting today.
So my background is kind of easy to explain. I've been working in supply chain for basically 20 years now. Started in the parcel world, working for UPS while I was during university. Found out I didn't intend to be in supply chain. I actually wanted to be an international man of leisure and intrigue, but apparently that's not a job. And so since I was already working at UPS, and I was like, this is kind of fun. I'm kind of good at it. I really like the problem solving element of it. It's like I call it the living Rubik's Cube, right? You're just kind of always trying to solve new problems. And every time you think you get it solved, the industry comes up with some new technology or some new approach that basically undoes your solution anyway. And so that has been a continual source of fun for me. I really enjoy supply chain management. So I went from UPS into the biodiesel industry, worked there for a couple of years. Then I went over to Walmart, thought I was jumping back into the lion's den of corporate world, and was pleasantly surprised at how enjoyable it was to work there. Eventually, they relocated me out here to Arkansas, where I live now, to work at Walmart Home Office. Had a great run for about 6 years at Walmart, working in the transportation space, managing their inbound collect, and just learning a ton about how that world works. And then a couple of years ago in 2022, I saw an opportunity to take a really cool role over here on the Uber Freight consulting team, working with my former boss, Russell Zupo. It's been a blast. And so my current role is I work with a ton of different customers. So I'm a data scientist by education, my master's degree in data science, but with my operations background, it really allows me to kind of act almost as a solutions architect. So I'm kind of coming up with, I have the technical acumen to bring real solutions to kind of pernicious and consistent problems that I can identify in the data. And so that's a lot of fun. And that's a lot of what I do. And so David Dobrikowski came to me in March and said, hey, we're wanting to bring someone from the retail and CPG world to ARM. Would you be interested in talking about it? And I'm like, what's ARM? What are you talking about? Dobrikowski and I had worked together before. We met each other through CSCMP and through the U of A. I've guest lectured a few times in his classes, and we're kind of buddies. And so he introduced me to Nancy Anderson, and then we just kind of rolled from there. And it was a blast to be able to speak at ARM. I learned a ton. So
David's actually been on the podcast before with a few other members of his team. Definitely
phenomenal.
A supply chain expert for sure. Yeah. Maybe even just start with, we got introduced at the ARM conference, as you mentioned, and you learned a lot while you were there, but why were you even invited? Like, I understand David recommended you, but like, what was it? ARM obviously was sort of like, hey, this is what we want from you at the conference.
Yeah. So the invitation I was given was, what would you do if you were going to consult on this, right? If these were the problems, they kind of laid it out for me, some of the stuff that the healthcare industry is dealing with. How would you create a technical solution or a project solution to solve these problems? And so I kind of came up, just looking at a couple opportunities, kind of looking at some of the somewhat analogous work that we do. Obviously, Uber Direct is involved in some of the courier business today, so it's not like it's completely alien. Nevertheless, I thought, these are the places where I could see disruptive technologies really making an impact. One of those was AI, agentic AI especially, which we talked about at the conference. There's a lot of ways that can enable integrations that up until this point have been impossible. It's such a unique tool for discernment that it can automate things that were impossible to automate before. So that was one. Another one was what I call integrated supply chain control tower, which is really just kind of the orchestration technology built on top of all these different AIs. And then the kind of final one beyond like a parcel TMS system was this gig economy approach, which learning about how much is parcel, how much is very small case counts, very small case packs. It just felt like, leveraging the kind of dynamism of a model like the Uber Direct or Walmart Spark. It doesn't have to be Uber Direct, but that's the one that makes the most sense to me because that's where I work. Doing something in that space, you're really leveraging your entire local population, and you can save so much money, especially with what I know about how why parcel is so expensive. Managing at UPS for 7 years and just dealing with everything that goes into that, I'm very intimately aware of why parcel is expensive, and the gig economy approach literally just sidesteps that entire process and saves all that overhead.
just define gig economy for everybody.
Thank you.
I know people are familiar with Uber, but they may not be totally familiar and have an understanding of what gig economy actually means.
Hayes is like, did you get a gig? Did you get a gig? Did you get a gig? Hayes doesn't know what it means.
Like, well, in gig, I live in Nashville, Justin, and so a gig here.
Yep.
It's not that different. It's not that different at all.
Like I got a job, I got to go perform, I got to sing. That's my gig. I'm gigging. I gig around town. That's kind of the thing.
That's exactly the premise of the title, right? So it's like if you think about like if I'm a drummer, but I'm not in a band, right? I get gigs, right? So they'll be like, hey, I want you to come play for us tonight, but you're not in the band. We just need someone to sub in because we don't have a drummer this week, right? And so that's the idea is you just play the gig. You're not playing, you don't have a job in the band. And that's very similar to how the gig economy works. So essentially what it is, it's just like how Uber drivers or Lyft drivers work. They're not a taxi company. They have their own car. They bring their own equipment, and then they utilize the data aggregation technology of Uber to find the ride. So Uber or Lyft or whomever, right, connects them to their ride. And so that's saving them all that overhead. And then the people, everyone's using Uber. You have an app. You just say, I want a ride. And then it'll just say, who's the closest driver? You can say, I want that one. And then it makes the connection, does all the technical stuff for you. And then it even tells them where to go, gives them the directions. Well, gig work in the supply chain space is very similar. It's just instead of carrying people, you're carrying food like Uber Eats, right? Or what's it called? Grubhub. I kept saying GitHub because that's my data nerd side of me. Or so you got Uber Eats, that's doing it for food, and Uber Direct is doing it with parcels. So it's the very exact same thing. Instead of delivering messy food, you're delivering parcels. You swing by a location to pick up what you're wanting to wherever they're fulfilling the product from, and you deliver it to its final destination. And that's why I think it's so powerful, because it's literally just anybody, right? Like you don't need a whole fleet of people. You just need people willing to work. So if I'm UPS, right, my highest overhead is I got to buy trucks, right? I've got to manage a highly unionized set of great people, but nevertheless, union drivers aren't always exactly fun to work with, right? Because they got a lot of expectations, and you have to dispatch, right? So you got to spend all that money on proactively dispatching. So there's all this overhead. There's these facilities. There's all this kind of stuff, and they're good at what they do. Don't get me wrong; they're phenomenal in their performance and service, but a product like Uber Direct or Walmart Spark, which is doing pretty much the same thing, can bypass all of that overhead. The driver brings his own truck, brings his own car. All you need, the software does the dispatching and does the routing. Literally, all you need to do is be a part. Anybody can just join Uber Direct and they can access and say, hey, I want this parcel picked up at this time. And it'll direct drivers that are nearby to do it. And the cool thing is so Walmart Spark is doing a good job of this. I know the guys that make that product. Like, I'm not saying just Uber is the only game in town, but I do think Uber is the furthest along. And one of the coolest things about Uber is because we have such a large driver for rides population, the same people doing rides can also do Eats and can also do Direct. So it's the same population. So they can just say, oh, I got a ride. Oh, no, I don't got a ride, but I've got a parcel I could go pick up from this DC because I just dropped them off at the airport. I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's no rides around. There's no planes about to land. But there's this warehouse over here that says if I pick up 3 parcels, I can go deliver them. It'll get me back to town, and then I can do another ride.
So, yeah, that was my question, Justin, and I think you just answered it. But we're not talking necessarily about vans and tractor trailers. We're talking about vehicles like cars that can do some of this.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, for parcel, why do you need you don't need a commercial vehicle?
Coop, I'm gonna ask the question too, because I'm thinking about it as a supply chain guy living in the healthcare world, boots on the ground, waiting for that package to show up. I get it. Food absolutely makes sense. Healthcare, hospital, a little more urgency, a little more dedication to the patient, to the mission of what we're trying to do. I'm trying to think about how that is picked up and how it's received and how I'm notified as the end user receiving it at my dock, so I can get it from dock to doctor. Does that make sense, Coop? Can you walk me through that a little bit, even for our listeners?
Yeah, I can try. I mean, I'm not as close to that kind of UX side of it as I am in more the kind of, like I said, the big picture strategy side of it. But in the same way that you have an application on your phone that'll let you know when a driver is getting close to pick you up for your Uber, or if you get a notification when they're 3 minutes out with your sandwich from wherever, right? The same thing will tell you, you have real-time tracking because they're getting the GPS signal in basically real time and giving you real-time ETAs. So it is adjusting in real time everything. So where that parcel is at every point in its journey, and also giving you an ETA of when it should arrive. So it's actually easier to use probably than the UX that you're using today for
Coop,
courier.
that helps me out. I was on site last week, and there was the lab. The lab came down and said, we're down. We're waiting for a product from this vendor, and we need to know when it arrives, FedEx, right now. What was I doing with the team? I was going in and out to the warehouse to see if the truck was going to show up. Walking back and forth, because they were literally down. And that happens sometimes overnight, this stuff, and they're just backed up. So like giving that notification and noting that, boom, it's arrived, it's there, that's huge. That's not happening right now.
But Gary, think about the other application. Like
Please.
You're trying to order it, but you could have had stock somewhere else in the health system, and you could leverage the driver to go get it from one location and bring it to another, or start thinking about the terms of like, all of these consolidated service centers where inventories, at least not all of it, but a lot of it centrally located. Then you have people running back and forth that way instead of waiting for the vendor to send something, via FedEx to a single location.
That's such a great point. I'm going to take it one step further, Coop. Non-emergent transport patients.
Ooh, that's probably got a different level.
And we can take that to another piece of the puzzle.
I don't know if we've ever explored that. I mean, I'm sure Dara would be fascinated.
I'm telling you, it's a giant opportunity, and I'm going to say it right now because the current scope of where that's at to get a patient that's left the hospital to get them to a certain location, it's in all mediums, from the professional EMS to the yellow cab. Why wouldn't we utilize this to do that as well with the
I'm sure they
non-emergent?
Are, right?
I'm talking about non-emergent. Yes,
I'm sure they're using Ubers all the time.
They are to a T. I've had that conversation, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, like, doing it in a structured way in collaboration with the hospital, right? So, like, the hospital is saying, hey, we want to, we've got this patient. They're very loopy. They're, still coming down from their surgery or whatever. It's not an emergency. They're fine to travel. We just need someone to come pick them up and make sure they get to their house safely and get inside. Yeah, I mean, that's not essentially all that different than delivering parcels or delivering food, right? Where you take a picture at the door to show you deliver the food. It's like you walk them to the. I mean, Walmart's again, not necessarily for just Uber, but Walmart's going in and delivering groceries, like literally putting them in the fridge for you. So it's like it's not a unheard of thing for gig drivers to go in people's houses, help them sit down, whatever. Like make sure they get inside and are safe or whatever. Like that's a potential thing, but I don't know if that's ever been explored.
But Coop, the point of I'm sorry, Hayes, and I'm gonna let you jump in here. But the point of the thing is the back end support that you're talking about, because I'm still seeing phone call to phone call to phone call to phone call. You call a 911 and the 911 takes precedence over the non-emergent patient to get shipped home. So this back end support that you're talking about on the gig economy and the back end support that you briefed on earlier is. I'd like to talk to you after this. I'd really like to talk to you after this. So.
No, I think it's fascinating. But yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry I side railed this a little bit, but yeah,
good.
Yeah.
I think the important part from a big picture part too, Gary, is like you're getting into like nuanced applications, but at the end of the day, like what's the differentiator here, right? And I think we were touching on something with the GPS sort of visibility to like when's it going to arrive, like that's what queued you up significantly. But I think being able to see that, and then also just from a really high level understanding demand and supply from a logistics standpoint versus a supply standpoint, there's a lot of visibility. To Coop's point, there's a lot of visibility to that the AI can be layered on that we don't necessarily have, because it's not a lot of it, like even if you look at couriers, right? Let's take couriers for an
Yep.
example.
Let's talk about it.
You're probably contracted with like four different couriers,
If at
right? You don't
least at
have a
minimum.
centralized management system to understand that. So you can't layer AI on to like one of your couriers might have a really good, kind of tracking model for them, and you have a really good sense of where things are at, but they've only got so many couriers underneath their umbrella and you're leveraging three others. So then, ultimately you don't have good visibility, from an entire enterprise standpoint on where everything is at, just from maybe your preferred supplier or provider of services. And so,
Well, I would actually say that, I mean, when I was talking about that control tower approach, that is where the industry is going over the next few years, right? So like, for example, you could use AI to normalize and to basically as a similar kind of data aggregator to take the information from those various couriers, no matter how small they are, right? And as long as they have functional APIs, and you can then normalize the data, standardize it, and then present it with similar ETAs. But we're still several years out from having anything like that. The benefit of using something like an Uber Freight is that's kind of part of the model, right? It comes out of the box with what you get. And it's so fun. I mean, we all do it all the time, right? I mean, every time we go to the airport and take an Uber, we're using this technology. So it's not really all that different. And then to add on the next layer, like you were saying, inventory management, it's totally feasible for us to connect the inventory management software that you have to something like our transportation data, right? And we could build some kind of project around that too. So, I mean, that's not out of the box. That's something we'd have to build, but I mean, those kinds of solutions are possible. So they literally, once it's arrived and you've confirmed that you got it, it will update your inventory.
Which is so incredibly valuable. And one of my questions might be, I think Gary was starting to go there, is about some of the products and the specimens and the things that we're talking about are confidential, or it's essential that it gets there, right? It could be a blood, it could be a medical device or whatever. We have to know who's picking it up and to be dependable. Is there a way to vet or have a closed system of drivers that are vetted or something that could participate in this? Therefore, yeah, bonded perhaps, just that the health system, a large health system with 10 hospitals would say, I'd love to have 25 gig guys that I could just call on a moment's notice, but also I know that they're the 25 who've been vetted and or have bonded. Make sense?
It does. I think that, I mean, I don't know where we're at, and this is just a lack of my understanding. Although if anybody wants to learn more, we can explore together for sure, right? And you guys we'll talk about how to get a hold of me later. But like pharmaceuticals are probably not a good idea, right? Like, because like Uber Freight Uber in general, right? Like, as far as working for Uber Freight, I think our brokerage is one of the most secure brokerages in the world because we're using advanced AI for fraud detection and all this kind of stuff. And I know the guys that build that. I mean, it's really good data science. So we're using technology that, is deployed in the Pentagon, the same kind of tech, right, to identify fraud. So I think that our drivers they're watched, their performances, people get to rate them and everything. As far as them having been vetted, I don't know. I don't know if there's a tiered system that people can, where you can I know there's tiered, like, how when you get an Uber, you can get this is like a high, a vehicle that's like, luxury
Large
or whatever.
XL or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So there probably is, and I'm just not aware of it, some way of tiering driver performances where they have a certain level of like they have, X amount of years of experience. They've never, they're always getting good reviews. They're just very trustworthy. I'm quite sure that there is some level of that in there. I'm just not aware of it.
but I'm also thinking, like, first off, you get some visibility on each individual employee based on ratings, right? So, like, I think there's a feedback loop that doesn't exist today that is quite as transparent and easy to put into the system between the, provider that's contracting with the supplier, and I think that could really help them, just kind of like understand, like there should be some level of driver requirements. But even then, on a minimum basis, I mean, you are doing background checks and things like that on any time a driver. So why wouldn't you be able to, like, tiered or otherwise, why wouldn't you be able to have an established set of requirements? And it's just sort of like, hey, you've got to meet these minimum requirements and sustain, a reliability rating of, X number of stars, to remain active. And The
Well,
people
certain,
that get the
yeah,
best ratings get the jobs first, right? You can even like apply that. I think those things are kind of possible.
well, I'm sure they're possible. I mean, the answer to possible is almost always yes. It's just whether or not it's been done or what would the
There's a
development of it
business
be?
case
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
So I think that as far as in our Uber Direct world goes, I'm not quite sure, but I do, as far as how the drivers are rated today, I know that there's a lot of gamification stuff where they can basically, they get rewards by their level of performance on top of their whatever they get paid. So if you get an X amount of performance, you get, there's some Uber reciprocity for that, right? You get gifts and stuff as a result. So there is an incentive structure for that. As far as like, we're already delivering parcels. We're already delivering high value parcels. So I'm sure that some of that stuff exists. I'm just not close enough to that part of the business to know how it works. But again, we could definitely find out together if anybody wants to, if anyone's worried about it.
Well, I just think it's another part of this discussion. If you really want to have a closed cell in a way that to make supply chain comfortable, we might need to get there somewhere. And if the other Justin knew anything about vendor credentialing, maybe that could be parlayed into this, and drivers would be credentialed. I don't know, just a thought, Justin.
Oh yeah, I've had that thought, and Coop, you and I could talk about it offline as well. But
That's well said, Hayes. Well
there's
said.
absolutely, I think there, just getting the right requirements in place to have that level of confidence. What I really do like though about the gig economy, like what you said, is the incentives for performance. I feel like there are a lot of organizations that just really aren't able to do that for a variety of reasons. But because these folks are not direct employees, you get to do a lot of creative things with how you motivate the workforce that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in a standard corporate environment. And that's what I kind of want to like keep diving off of like how the gig economy approach could be transformational in the way that we, identify, what is quality, right? What is reliability? And then be able to move forward. And I wonder if it just makes sense for you to talk a little bit more about Uber Direct and other similar solutions to Uber Direct, how you're taking a different approach to logistics with the gig economy, like just to continue kind of like shaping people's ideas around what this could mean for healthcare.
Yeah, so I love the notion, and I here's what I think is so disruptive about it. Anytime you want a good solution, you want to take it back to kind of first principles. Like, what is it that you're really trying to solve here, right? We want to get one thing, a parcel, from one location where it's not useful to a location where it is useful, right? And so what the premise of, just like we reimagined how taxis work, we're doing the same thing for parcel. And what's cool about it is the best level of security is transparency, right? You see them, we know who these people are. It's really hard it's actually probably easier to steal a lot of something than to steal one individual parcel that you're only that's the only thing you're transporting. Because if it goes missing, like, we know that you were the one carrying it and it went missing while in your custody. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty hard to miss, right? And so, like I said, if I had, not that this ever happened to me, but if there were something, if a parcel went missing on the back of a UPS driver or a FedEx driver with, 300 parcels on board, it's pretty hard to know, like, did that fall out the back? Like, what happened, right? Did someone sneak in there when he was doing something else? But if you were just delivering one from point A to point B and it goes missing and along the way, it's like, that's on you, buddy. So it's pretty hard to hide. And the other thing about it is the empowering nature of this. So rather than them being an employee, like at UPS or FedEx, they're an owner. They're a private business person that's doing that, like, that's a private contractor for themselves. If they ruin this opportunity for themselves by performing poorly, they're done. They're not going to get another chance, right? So, I mean, they maybe could lie or try to get back in, but we have things to look for those kinds of fraud, right? So they're only going to get one opportunity to do a good job. And if they do something catastrophic like stealing, they're done and they're never going to get a chance to come back again. So the transparency is the security, right? I have visibility to it. You have visibility to it. It's harder to hide your failures when it's all on you. And you're doing this because you want that extra work. I mean, one of the most coolest things about the gig economy is how empowering it is to the community, right? You're giving moms and, people who maybe already have full-time jobs but want to make a little extra scratch. You're giving them the opportunity to self-empower, to go out, use the assets they already have available to go make money and offer a service that the community needs. It's a really cool approach to solving supply chain problems.
I like it a lot. To your point, I mean, it's hard enough for some of these systems to get the right people, to hire the right people, get them where they want them. Maybe it'd be a night shift, or it depends. But now with this, it would solve some issues. It could definitely fill in some holes and become a vital part of what they do. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, and there's logistic aspects of it that we do as well. For example, at Uber Direct, like you don't just have to fulfill from the point of origin. We could take an entire, like if you say you have a consolidator that's in, Dallas and you got to go to kind of a quasi rural area and you don't want to have all that parcel going from Dallas out to Stephenville or whatever, right? If we know that's going to happen on a regular basis, we can have like a location somewhere nearby Stephenville where we could take the entire pallet out there and then use the local drivers there. Does that make sense? To cut back on all that extra incremental cost, which is also from an environmental standpoint, another big advantage of doing this. You don't have all the idle time, all the wasted miles and empty miles that you have in parcel.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, honestly, like one of the things that you mentioned that I like is, let's say there is a warehouse out by an airport, which is common, and, you're trying to move product. You're right. You could have somebody who's bringing somebody back to the airport, dropping them off for a flight, and then grabbing a parcel. And so to your point, like 50% of the drive time is non-productive drive time. So the more opportunities that you give these business owners, as you rightly put it in the gig economy, to make every movement with their vehicle a productive movement, it's got a better, it literally impacts the environment too, right? Because somebody else was driving two ways and only one of those ways was productive previously, and then you've got somebody else doing that. So allowing them to have has to be performing, I guess, is the best way to say it, in healthcare, but also outside of healthcare. So every, gallon or ounce of gas that's burning is burning with a purpose, at least, is, I think important. And, there are a lot of communities, to your point, that, maybe they're lower income communities and the opportunities for jobs are lower, but then there's also, the deck is kind of stacked with, I can't work a full 8 hours. I've got family responsibilities, et cetera, or I can't get a job that's staggered with my significant other's, schedule because somebody's got to be home with the kids at these times. Like those kinds of things come up. I think to your point, it can have a really positive impact on the local economy to have that kind of work schedule flexibility. And we know at the very least, we've got products that got to move in these communities because in many cases, the healthcare, system is the number one, employer in that region, but they don't necessarily have the ability to employ, everybody in an FTE standpoint, especially if the volumes aren't predictable.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And the other side of it too is like, if I'm like, my wife doesn't really feel comfortable doing rideshare, right? Because she doesn't necessarily, she doesn't really necessarily want a stranger. She's very small. She doesn't want a stranger in the car. Not that I actually think that if you look at the stats, the statistics of safety are really high for Uber drivers. But I think even still, she doesn't feel comfortable doing that, right? But delivering parcels, it's literally just, carrying a package from one place to another. There's no threat. And unlike Uber Eats, there's no risk of food spilling in your car or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a pretty innocuous work to do. It's safe. And also too, one of the things I haven't mentioned is that, we're bundling this stuff too. So we're not going to just give you one parcel. If we can optimize and give you multiple in a row, right? Where you pick up one to go to the next one, to go to the next one. Like we're always looking to re-optimize in real time using our software to really maximize your utility at any given time, because it helps our end customer and it helps you, the driver.
I just wanted to sit on that one piece real quick about the re-optimization in real time. I feel like that's a big disruptive component to this conversation, is if you do have GPS coordinates and the demand signals that are coming throughout a healthcare system are very fluid throughout the day, and you are trying to potentially, leverage excess inventory at one location to get it to another location versus trying to ship it from the manufacturer directly to that site. This is, I think, a way to, like, again, you can actually speed up the movement of these packages because you do know where anybody who is, delivering exactly where they are at any time. You can just add a stop and it might be 5 minutes out of their way, but whatever package they were already delivering, that's not disruptive to them. But if they were to have driven all the way to the first delivery, dropped it off, and then went back and got the second one, there's a lot of efficiency that I think, honestly, you could deliver, on the demand a lot more quickly. And we don't have that visibility right now, I don't think. Like, I think that for most companies, that's just going to, some dispatcher who's trying to figure it out, and it's not fast.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I could take it one step further. I mean, and Matt, you want to talk about disruptive. So imagine you're a hospital, like a centralized hospital, and you're kind of the big hospital in the area, but you've got several, what are they called?
Non-ambulatory service centers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you got your ambulatory surgery centers or whatever, right? That are there kind of on the periphery. And either you as the hospital, like, so right now they don't have shared inventory, right? Each one of those is managed individually, but through a data aggregator model, right? Like I was kind of mentioning before, that inventory could be potentially visible to software, and you go like, okay, we're now low, and we're going to now miss our ability to do this surgery today, which is obviously where the OR is, where the money is, right? So we can't miss it. So in the current state, what do they got to do? They got to go like spend a ton of money to go get it from some other part, from the distributor down the, that could be kind of far away. They got to pay top price for it, or there's an ambulatory surgery center that's 3 miles away that has that inventory on hand and they don't need it today, right? And they can literally sell it to you at a discount, right? So you get it cheaper and you get the rate and you get the, or you get it at cost or whatever, right? And then you get it back to them later. So like you could literally share inventory across multiple facilities, and have that kind of dynamism happening in real time. And then software like ours can re-optimize the inventory so that you get it back.
Especially in that non-acute setting, that would be huge. And, we've had a number of vendor spotlights, with companies that, are tackling that with real-time visibility to inventory that didn't exist before, that could totally, plug into what you're talking about to really optimize the utilization of inventory. And expiring product is a serious concern in those non-acute settings. So,
and I think, Coop, the way you're explaining it and our listeners hearing this makes them less scared of perpetual inventories, because there's a lot of hesitation to be in that real-time perpetual environment. It just seems too cumbersome. This seems to simplify and create an ease of use on some real-time decrementing of those needs. And it really does come into the clinics. I mean, you have a system, you have a 13 hospital system, and you have your main core warehouse, whatever that product is. It takes forever to find if it's out of another non-acute. But if you have a real-time perpetual-based inventory on this back end, whatever we're calling this, gig economy, whatever it is, the background built entity, you could see it, you could go get it, get your driver done, taken care of. I'm thinking of solutions in so many different capacities right now. So many different solutions.
And think about this too. So one of the things, so shared inventory is also complicated in the retail space as well, right? So there are organizations that offer that, but it has also been cumbersome here for a long time. And this is one of the places where the, AI native products can really kind of change the game, because what you're now saying is like, the decision trees to manage and optimize a shared inventory are very big, right? They're cumbersome and almost cost prohibitive, right? Whereas if I can just have a machine, an AI that can discern and be taught how to make a good decision like a person would, then the machine can decide how to optimize and keep everything on track without having to kind of constantly rejigger the decision trees in a deterministic standpoint. And it's a game changer. And also, to be clear, right? Uber Freight does not offer, or Uber Direct for that matter, we do not offer a shared inventory software. We don't have an inventory management software. So I'm not saying that this is something we offer. We're just the connective tissue that can enable that, right? That can make that possible.
You're the drummer of the band. You're the gig.
You need someone to get it from here to here. We got people around.
My brain's going 100 times.
I love how you took Kay's gig example with the drummer and tied it all in here at the
always
end of the
always listening, Hayes, always listening. But no, I'm seriously thinking about this not just like internally in a hospital system. I'm thinking this like statewide. Snake venom. You don't buy max levels of snake venom because the cost is astronomical. You might find one or two. Obviously, the demographic, the geography is going to dictate it. But if you had a statewide Arizona, I'm just going to throw it out. I think snakes are more prevalent there, maybe. But I'm thinking like you could have a statewide network where you could be like, who's got it? We got a snake bite. We're out. We had one yesterday. It's astronomical expense to keep on the shelf. So I'm thinking about this like in bigger capacities, not just one healthcare system.
I think I know we're at time, but I think it just really highlights, and it's a good way to think about it, like what this technology does, whether it's the AI technology that my team does or it's the gig economy. Technology is making possible solutions that probably the healthcare industry has been wanting to do for decades and has felt impossible to, like the burden to get over that hill has been too high because of, HIPAA violation stuff and all this kind of stuff. Well, technology can anonymize. Technology can do stuff now that was hitherto impossible even 3 years ago, let alone 30 years ago. And so now we can really change the world. And I think that the industry is ripe for disruption. And again, if anybody's interested in Uber Freight, we're all about disruption. It's our DNA. It's what we do.
All right. So, how can they reach you, Justin?
Yeah. So, you can get a hold of me at justin.cooper@uberfreight.com. No hyphen or period in between Uber Freight. Hopefully you know how to spell freight. I misspell it. I always get my I and E backwards. So it's justin.cooper, COOPER @uberfreight.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Justin David Edgley Cooper, I think, in the world. So you can find me there. If you're in the Northwest Arkansas area and you want to come stop by and ask questions, you can also swing by our office in Rogers. Happy to come down and say hello.
That was Justin Cooper, or Coop, Director of Strategic Consulting and Continuous Improvement at Uber Freight. This was an excellent conversation, totally disruptive around how we might be able to re-engineer healthcare supply chain logistics, Hayes.
Absolutely. First of all, he was wonderful, but he opened my eyes to so many other possibilities that I've never thought of, and likely some of our listeners, but it's here to stay. The gig economy can really impact, I think, healthcare in multiple ways. Great job. Justin killed it.
Yeah. And, healthcare systems are always looking for ways to support the local community. I mean, this is just a really interesting way to bring flexible work schedules, and help people augment their incomes. And I'm also thinking about those rural settings, where there may just not be as many jobs available. So, all right, excellent episode with Coop. And on behalf of Hayes, Gary, and myself, thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Power Supply.
Bam!
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Power Supply. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on your iPhone or Android. Simply search for Power Supply in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@powersupplymedia.net. We look forward to hearing from you.